Second session, so if I could request everybody to take their seats, um, please. Yeah. Yeah. All right. So this session is basically a continuation of the medical technology discussion that we started, but it's a slightly different flavor. The idea here, since there is many entrepreneurs in the room, and the first thing that comes is people have the talent, people have the idea. Many times they have a team, but what they don't have is funding. It's about, and that's what it comes down to, that how do I get the funding? So we hope to focus here in the next period a discussion and from the experts, and especially from people who are on the other side of giving that funding, to talk to the entrepreneurs about how to go about and how to be most effective in raising money for their venture. So I'm going to ask here the panelists to introduce themselves, starting from Hazim there, and please take the microphone. Yeah.
My name is Hazim Ansari. I am a patent attorney by trade, but today I am here on behalf of Tech Coast Angels. I'm a member of the MedTech committee that does the screening to determine who comes in and actually pitches to the full panel.
My name's Alex Suh. It's Yes Suh. It's a Southern Korean name, not North. The fund that I started is called California Technology Ventures, which is based in Southern California, but we do invest globally around the world, both in IT and life sciences, primarily medical devices in life sciences, and software in the IT, as well as gaming and so on.
Hi, my name is Rob Berman. I'm the CEO of a medical device company called Hancock Jaffe. We're based in Irvine, California. Our specialty is tissue-based devices. And in May of this year, we went public. And so we are a small micro-cap company. And we can talk more about that. I'm sure we will.
Yeah, absolutely. So thank you, panelists, for introducing themselves here. What I'd like to start with Hazim, who is the president of Tech Coast Angels. And people, the first thing when the entrepreneur comes up with an idea, they want to figure out where to raise their first round of money. And many people, over the years I've been going while working for big companies, I go to these things, Thai-like things and Octane and other things, and they say, you raise money from friends and family. And I've been thinking all these years, I neither have friends nor have family who has money or is willing to give me money. And if I ever went to them, then it'll be like Amway, that they would stop being my friends, like what happens to all the Amway people. So the next thing I hear is go to angels. I still haven't figured that out, though I've raised money for my company, but without angels. So I'm going to turn it to Hazim to tell us the tricks of the trade on how to go to angels, what to do and what not to do.
Thank you, Sanjay. Just a clarification, I'm not president of Tech Coast Angels. I am a member of the MedTech panel. I am involved very much in reviewing and screening MedTech companies. Let me give you a flavor for what the kind of companies look like when they come. Generally speaking, you're looking at a average valuation of about $6 million. That's the size of the kind of company that comes. Most investments are in the range of $200,000 to $500,000. That's not unique to Tech Coast Angels. That is, if you, for example, go to the Angel Capital Association, take a look at their average stats. That tends to be what most angel groups do in the $200,000 to $500,000 range. That's not to say that Tech Coast Angels doesn't do more than that. They did 5 deals last year, north of $1 million. A couple deals that were north of $2 million, which tends to be on the much higher side, but it does happen. Average company size is about 7 people around there. That's in line with what you see in the ACA. You're looking at 64% of the people are first-time CEOs, right? So this is not a requirement to be an experienced CEO to come get angel money. What is true, though, is that most people that come tend to be not in the R&D stage. I can't name a single deal where we invested in a pure R&D play. A quarter of the companies tend to be in actual product development, prototype stage, and then of course the rest are in an expansion stage. They're in actual sales, they're in actual revenue. So generally speaking, the question is, how do you go from a pure idea to actual prototype, which means that most of these companies that come have already raised money from friends and family. You know, typically $200,000 to $250,000 from friends and family. That's gotten them to a product/prototype stage. Now they're looking for another $500,000 to get to their first, substantive milestone. That's typically where the angel group, Tech Coast Angel, sees most of its deals, and that's not uncommon, frankly. Tech Coast Angels does about $15 million in investments last year, 43 different companies. A lot of those get syndicated around the country, right? There's about 24, 25 different angel groups. Actually, now it's more like 40, representing 1,500 angel investors, over $1 billion in actual investment size.
Thank you, Azim. That's very, very inspirational. Are there people in the audience who are trying to raise money or have tried to raise money for their companies? Yeah, in different stages. So, Alex, I'll turn over to you. You manage a good-size venture fund or perhaps funds. Perhaps you could tell the audience on what you look for and in things that you fund and what's the size of fund, et cetera, that you make. Yeah.
We're a little bit of a different venture capital fund. Most venture capital funds have a 10-year closed-in life, which means basically the fund lasts for 10 years. But the first 2 to 3 years, they usually invest most of the money and then reserve the rest because they have to have an exit in order to raise the next round usually. So what they try to do is get an exit within the first 5 years, if not sooner, so that they can start raising more money. However, in the life sciences, as you know, it can take much longer, and for entrepreneurs in general, it can take longer than 3 to 4 years to develop a company and exit successfully. So what we did was we did a 20-year plus fund. It's an evergreen fund, and in addition to that, we did all the capital in advance. So there's no capital calls like other funds. And a capital call basically is where they have to ask the investor or the limited partners who invested in that fund for money at the time that they need money to invest in these different companies. The problem is economic cycles throughout history shows that some of these funds have died, unfortunately, because they couldn't come up with capital calls because the markets were bad or whatever else, and the LPs didn't want to invest anymore. So we wanted to avoid that situation. We also have a fund of funds where we've invested in 12 emerging managers around the world so that they can be kind of our eyes and ears and offices and partners in different locations from Asia to Europe to North America. And then what we look for is generally, again, this is a life science thing, so we primarily do med tech. We've only done a few therapeutics. We really don't do them anymore, and those are very rare exceptions that we'll go forward with one. Our range of investment can be, $1 million to $2 million usually in the first round, reserve up to $5 million more. And then we've invested, though, on average, about $10 to $12 million in some of our more rapid growing companies over the years.
Thank you, Alex. Entrepreneurialism is all about being, non-traditional and finding new ways. And my friend Rob here, he is the CEO of a publicly traded pre-revenue company, and this is not his first company that he took to public. So I'd like Rob to comment on how to use IPOs as a means to raise money and share his experiences in doing that, please.
When people think about public companies, they think about huge corporations. But there's also an ecosystem out there for what we call microcap companies. And more these days, IPOs, which were at one time considered to be an exit strategy where you would raise hundreds of millions of dollars. We went public in May and raised $7.5 million. So there's a whole nother ecosystem for microcap companies and early stage companies in the public markets. It has advantages and disadvantages. It gives you certain access to capital, but there is also an expertise in being a public company. So in addition to your subject matter expertise, making your medical devices work, there's a whole nother part to the business. My expertise is in the public company side. So coming to Hancock Jaffe, I did not have a medical device experience, but I'm quickly learning. So when you hear about public companies, don't necessarily think about large conglomerate type companies. There is, like I said, an ecosystem for smaller companies, and it has certain advantages and disadvantages, and maybe we'll get to those in a little bit.
Yeah, thank you, Rob. So, and I have a number of quite more questions to the panel, but I wanted to make sure that the audience questions get answered. So, do the audience have questions at this point that they want to share? See how I can be creative and take a microphone to you. Yeah, possibly.
So in fundraising, I was wondering how do you factor in the economics of the labor that you put in? Let's say two guys sit down, work for a year. On the market, they might make $200, $250 a year. So at the end of the first year, they have something to show for it. So would you consider, like they've put in $500K of investments, would you consider labor as
Well, at least from an angel standpoint, we don't really care, honestly. If you put in 10 years of work and it's worthless as a product, it doesn't matter, does it? I mean, at the end of the day, what your valuation is dependent upon what you built. And if you spent 5 hours and you created something that's extraordinary, you're going to get valuation based on that output as much as it took 10 years and it's worthless, right? So.
Alex, you want to comment on that?
It's basically the same answer. I mean, what you're talking about is sweat equity. And in the bottom line case situation is that, if you build a good company, you've got the right product, you got demand, but more importantly, you've got the right team, which we count more even than the technology in many cases, then you get a better momentum where you have to actually execute. If you can't execute, it doesn't matter how good that product is. We've seen tons of outstanding billion-dollar opportunities that have failed because they just couldn't execute with the wrong team, wrong experience, wrong opportunities or timing.
Thank you. Question back there. Do you mind going to that mic and sharing it? Thank you.
Just a quick question. How hands-on are you guys with the companies that you invest in?
So in our case, I pre-warn you in the first meeting, if you don't like hands-on, the meeting's over. We can be your worst nightmare or your best nightmare, or best dream. I shouldn't call it best nightmare. I like it the other way. Best nightmare. And that's why, in a way, I'm anti-VC, even though I'm a VC. I mean, if you built a good company and you can really build something that can become profitable or cash flow positive in sooner or later without putting a lot of venture capital money in or any, man, more power to you, and you should take full advantage of that, okay? But make sure you bring a team and advisory board or board of directors that have great experience that can help you through the progress and move your way up. But that's really important to us.
I think that's the benefits of being in Herbalife, right? That's who's upstairs?
Looks like it. Looks like
Yeah,
those guys
sounds
are having
like it.
more fun than us. Looks like.
Regarding the angel world, angels work very differently. One thing you'll realize if you do go and pitch to an angel network, while the actual angel group might work with you to get a singular term sheet, it's still herding cats. All of the angels are individuals. You have to go to each one. You have to get them to invest. Different angels have different psychological needs in terms of how they need to be handheld. So I think that generally speaking, angels tend not to be very involved, but you do run into the needy angel every so often.
Yeah. And I want to chime in there that it's like anything. You have to view manpower as your friends, as someone there to help you. So instead of, like we were talking about FDA earlier, you could view them as your friends or your enemies. Same thing as your investors, that you could view them as your friends. They invested money in you, they trusted you, and they certainly share the mission that you do. You just need to find a way to work collaboratively with them where you can utilize their strengths and their systems and supports that they might have over the years created, rather than hearing those, just the horror story side of it, that they micromanage and they come in my way for me to succeed. Certainly that's not the case. That's not the intent. Other questions? Yeah, sir.
I'm Dr. Sahota. I'm a practicing cardiologist. I have 30 patents to my name. Some of them are being marketed by several companies. And my son is very much in artificial intelligence. I have patents in that. And he works with the Watson computer group. But my question was the gentleman who last time gave the question that somebody could not diagnose the sinus thing, but the computer was able to diagnose it. I would have liked to know what the doctor's training was, what was his specialty. So what I want to say is that you cannot replace the human touch with the computers. And so I think especially experienced good doctor and who is well trained, computers cannot do it. For example, if that doctor was only a family doctor, then one can understand he could not diagnose sinus. But if he was an ENT specialist, which he should have seen this patient, he should be able to diagnose it, or he was not trained very well, did not have experience. So I think you can imagine the discussion goes on in our family. My son in artificial intelligence, I am quite the opposite. Artificial intelligence cannot replace the human being and human touch, no matter what development you can make. And thank you.
Very, very well said. Thanks for sharing your wisdom, Doctor.
I have a question, like, when you are looking for a VC or angel investor, the question that came, in fact, my son was trying to do something a few years ago, and I said, okay, I'll give you some money. He says, no, I don't want your money, I want some smart money. People who know what they're doing. So how do I figure out, and I'm trying to look at a couple of the different business ventures now, and if I go to a VC or angels, how do I figure out who's a smart guy and who's not a smart person? Because I want not their money, I want their, more than the money, I want their ideas and their thinking.
Well, I find the smart money thing to be very interesting because it doesn't really apply when you're trying to get a company up and running and you're looking for your first few $100,000 to $1 million. Really all you care about is this person's not going to bother you day and night about $25,000 worth of investment, right? So smart money, I think, comes maybe in with Alex and when you're probably further along and you're looking to scale and grow an organization, et cetera. But in the angel world, really you're looking for somebody who's not going to annoy you.
With us, it's a little bit different. You have a board of directors, and you bring in certain expertise from your board of directors, and you also have a medical advisory board. And so when you're a public company, you definitely want access to smart people and who are experienced in the subject matter, and that's what we do. I want to add that in addition to going public on your own, being a public company, the way I view it, is a platform. So we have a platform now at Hancock Jaffe. And we're looking to roll other products and startup ideas into that platform. Now, those ideas need to take advantage of what our expertise is, tissue-based devices in particular. I'm not saying that we're limited to that, but for people that are starting out, you know, I view us as a resource just like Haas and just like venture capital. You know, you can come to a company like ours, we can create a separate subsidiary for you. If your idea, if we think we can raise funding around it, you know, you could sort of be your own self-running unit that could ultimately get spun out as your own public company. So my point to the audience is look at public companies sometimes as potential sources of revenue if they have an interest in what you're doing. Certainly, you know, a company like ours, we're looking for new ideas in the medical device space. So it's not that, you know, and we have a platform. So for the right idea, with the right terms, you could make use of our platform.
Yeah.
Can I answer that for a second too? The earlier question about do they get in your business, is it good or bad, is a very important one in this particular case too. You got to go with your gut. Money, if you got a great idea, you'll get the money. Money is not the problem. The problem is finding someone that you're passionate and in love with in part, because you're going to be in bed with them for that period of time, but you have a prenuptial. And that prenuptial is when you get the exit, right? And the rules of that prenuptial is basically what the shareholders' agreement is. So what happens here is that you've got to have a very good feeling about the investor, not just the firm, but the individual partner that's going to be handling your investment, if you will, or your company on a regular basis. You just don't have the right fit, it's not an insult. Walk away. Walk away, find the right fit. It's like a law firm. You can have great name in a law firm, but you get the worst partner or the wrong partner, relationship-wise, you're screwed. Same thing in accounting and everything else. Venture capital is the same way. Smart, in our firm, we had a separate team for life sciences and a separate team for IT. We actually disbanded that because we figured out that we are not the smartest when it comes to technical things, because how can even 5 doctors with PhDs address all of life science? They think they can, but they can't. How can PhD triple E's or double E's in you know, engineering, et cetera, figure out all of IT? They can't, right? The social, everything, it's all different. So what you really look for, which is what we look for and what we did, is only the partners are successful entrepreneurs themselves and have failed companies themselves too, which is just as important because that's actually what happens more times than not with entrepreneurs. And so you want to try to avoid that with those type of what I call smart people versus just book smarts or, you know, I've got a degree from Harvard. Not that it's bad, but...
Yeah, thank you, Alex and Rob both. And Rob's company, Dr. Hancock, who founded Hancock Jaffe, he actually was inventor of one of the early heart valves, like Edwards, founder Edwards, and that sold to Medtronic. But their strategy has been that they have been divesting assets, right, and keep the company small. So he's looking for more entrepreneurs to come to him and plug into a large company, which is a tremendous opportunity there as well. Yeah, there is a question back there. Yeah, if you don't mind. I'd rather you walk than me.
Yeah, I got some steps in for
Thank you.
walking here. Yeah, this is Preeti Gupta. I actually work in medical device for a long time, 15 years. Working in Johnson & Johnson, but before that I was like a couple of years doing consulting and trying to see how this new wave of technology can help in med device. So current focus is on the augmented reality piece of it, where how we can use that in the R&D and also as well as in supply chain. But before that, since this is a VC and angel type of thing, I always think that, okay, if I have a great idea, I think if we wanted to make a template for med device for, just for the supply chain, for example, doing some changeover in the shop floor, machine assembly line and stuff like that. So if we want to do something, and I have great idea, and I have a software background too, but I need some more, cushion to do things. So, I mean, I always think that how I can invest my own money, and someone was saying here too, but at what point, I always have seen that VCs, they want like 50% or 49% of those kind of share on your idea. So I always think that what would be the good time where we say, okay, we are at a point to kind of pitch into the VCs and angel investor, and what would be the kind of negotiations? Some of the things, I mean, I'm kind of asking the other way around, but I wanted to know like how we kind of get started.
Getting started is one of the hardest of all questions, and people get started in different ways, but generally speaking, the best pitches that I hear are individuals who know the relationship between the value of their company and the financial requirements to achieve each of the milestones that increase that financial value. So for example, right, let's suppose you have a software-based idea in medtech, right? What does it cost to get to a basic prototype, to show people? Does it cost $150,000, $200,000? Every idea has different milestones related to the valuation ticks that increase that company. You might be hitting some very straightforward milestones at $200,000, $300,000, $400,000. I've been working on this implantable heart valve that takes hundreds and hundreds of thousands, or actually now in the low 7 millions, to get to any discernible milestone. So it really depends on the nature of the idea and how you can take up value based upon whatever financial milestones you can hit. That's where it begins. What is the most basic milestone you can hit, and how much money does it take? If you can do it at $250,000, then yeah, you call up your friends and family, give me $250,000, let me create that prototype, and then you have a group of people, angels, who are going to be like, oh, that's interesting. There's a prototype, there's some interest from potential customers.
Yeah, that's another thing too. Like, do you want like, hey, some pre-validation of, okay, hey, I have interested customers, or I have sold it to some 2 to 5 customers, my idea? It's like, because I feel that that's what some of the value is, a wait for your idea come in. Someone is laughing here, so I'm like, hey, I have very basic questions here. I was like, hey, I want to start from the basic. I mean,
when we talk about entrepreneurship, though, I think we need to talk about it more broadly. Everyone thinks of entrepreneurship, they think of startups, and they think of angels. But I've done very entrepreneurial things in my career within large companies, creating new businesses, new divisions, new products. And so also look to your existing employer and see if this is something that they're interested in developing. And will they give you the latitude that you need to be able to possibly, if it fits within their existing business. So, they obviously, you've auditioned because you've been working there for several years. They know about you and they know your qualifications. So I'm just mentioning that entrepreneurism can be in a lot of different forms. And, you mentioned Edwards Labs. Back in the day, Edwards employees would go to, I don't know if it was Mr. Edwards or Dr. Edwards, with an idea.
Mr.
And if he decided that he didn't want to fund that idea, then they would go off on their own. And so there were 4 or 5 companies that went out from Edwards Labs that ultimately went on to be successful. Warren Hancock was one of them, who doing the porcine heart valve. But there's nothing wrong with also looking and trying to do it within your company if it's a possibility.
yeah, that's a great idea too, because I think sometimes you have kind of a structure built and you're like, hey, I have validated in my company. Okay, now if Johnson & Johnson may be able to pay millions of dollars, but like, okay, what about small med device? I mean, they need a cheaper solution or things like that.
I'm just saying, companies like that are doing all kinds of things. They're doing, places, they're giving people benches where they can start they're looking for innovative products. So don't just
cast that aside.
I couldn't agree more. Be an entrepreneur, and you see different ideas come about, whether through incubators, Rob's very innovative new platform, inside big companies, spin-offs from universities. So there's tons of different ways. Speaking specifically from an angel perspective and what we see, right? We tend to see individuals who have toyed with an idea, filed a patent, right? Spoke to a handful of people, gotten sufficient confidence that there's an interest out there, found a few people that are like-minded that are going to join you. Maybe somebody you've networked and you've identified somebody in the industry who says, well, this person's retired, or maybe they've been very successful, they're in a relevant or related space, and maybe they're willing to be an advisor. And all of a sudden, you start creating a little ecosystem around you and your idea. You get sufficient, at some point in that spectrum, sufficient confidence to call friends and family and ask for $10,000, $15,000 worth of investment. And all of a sudden, you're building prototype, right? So there really isn't a singular momentary spark that says, okay, now I'm ready. As much as it is incremental steps every single day that get you there eventually.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you for the question. Looks like invoked a lot of good discussion on both. It looks like there's been theme of questions around valuation and all that, and we can discuss that more after the panel if there is an interest continues. So, sir, there was a question there?
Yes.
And Anil's been very patiently waiting all this while, so he'll be next. And hopefully we still have time for...
So I heard Preeti mention something, how do you start? My question is there a customized Google for MedTech? What I'm trying to say is, we are all here, we have a lot of questions, and we are getting some answers. Is there a forum? Is there another online panel somewhere where simple people like us can go to get expert advice? We might be expert in any one aspect of creating a product, but we might not have all the different answers that we need. So I'm gonna give a simple example. If my car's brakes are squealing, I go to YouTube and I say, my car brakes are squealing, and I'll get a lot of videos explaining why, what could it be. Now, when it comes to creating a new product, new company, is there a place out there, an online forum out there where people like us can go and just start throwing ideas and seeking suggestions from a variety of people? Thank you.
I don't know about an online forum, but let me tell you something that I learned several years ago that I do. I reach out to people that have done what I'm looking to do. And LinkedIn is great to do that, for example, and I ask for help. Don't be afraid to ask people for help. People generally like it, and if you don't ask, you don't get. Right? I came to Hancock Jaffe, and I wanted to bring some medical device expertise on the board. Reached out to Sanjay via LinkedIn. I didn't know Sanjay. I cold called him. I said, I just took over this company. I'm more of a capital markets guy. I'm looking to bring some medical device expertise on the board, and sure enough, he joined. So my advice to you is to find people that have done it before. And by the way, they may not answer, they may say no, that's okay, but that's a great way. Ask people for help.
Thank you. I'm getting all these signals. Oh, there's 3 minutes. Somebody else came and said no time. So we'll maybe let Alex answer this. Did you want to say something before we have any last question? Or either of you?
I think
Please.
Bob's right. The online thing, there's actually stuff on YouTube on how to get funded or whatever, but to come up with an idea, I'm not so sure. Plus, I would not share it, okay? I would not share what you're thinking about online, and I definitely wouldn't make it public, because if you make anything public that you write down and put it out, your IP filing is going to have some problems potentially. So you don't really want to do that. You want to keep that, quiet until you file what you're going to do. So that's one of the things that I would suggest. But like Bob says, I would ask people. The worst is they can say no. The best is they say yes. But again, make sure they've been there, done that before as well.
Okay, and the last audience question, please.
My question is about the exit strategy, basically. So let's say that you go out there, you have a great idea, you get investments, and it's understood that anyone, whether it's friends, families, VCs, angel investors, everyone is looking to multiply their money, or they would not be giving you the money. When it comes to exit strategy, also the idea has to materialize. You have to get your device designed. It's usually device cycles, design cycles, and time to market is a lot longer than many products. When it comes to that exit strategy, how do you, as angel investors and VCs, assure that the product that you're exiting out of, you are handing it to the next stage or the next group of people without causing ethics issues? And today, there is a film documentary that's playing out on Netflix. It has to do with a product of Conceptus called eSure, and it's giving medical devices a very bad name. It's giving the FDA, that's probably one of the best agencies of the US government, a bad name. So in terms of exit strategies, how do you exit and assure that the product is going to reach the people as the founders, envisioned, as they wanted? I mean, ultimately they wanted to do good.
So that's a tough one, because if you want to make money, it may not actually get out to the market. Sometimes big companies buy your technologies to keep you out of the market, and they pay for that because they don't want you competing potentially against their own products that they've spent a lot of time and energy and marketing dollars to build that ecosystem for that product. Others will love incorporating or taking over and replacing that product. So the ethics side of it is a very tough one, quite frankly. You can look at the history and find out from, even online and friends who've sold companies to people, whether or not that's the right thing to do. And there's basically, two generally planned ways for an exit. One is basically you sell your company to another company, which hopefully will pay you the value that you deserve, plus all the other investors, or take it public. Now, public, I quite frankly tell you, on an IPO basis, is not actually an exit for most people. It's you have a lockup period, your stock's high in the beginning, it drops very shortly thereafter, usually during your lockup period, and depending on the technology, the shares may only trade in very small volumes on the public market, which means you can't get out in the bulks of whatever. And if you, the entrepreneur, and your management team start selling their shares, the stock tanks, okay? So that's a lot of considerations on what an exit can be. So personally, I prefer, if it's not a financing thing, because IPOs can be a financing source for continued growth, you're better off selling it to a technology company or that wants your product, to use your product going forward. But that's the most important thing. And then being very, very important, don't be greedy on the valuation. On both sides, the VC as well as the founder, because that's where the headaches usually come in, and the fighting internally is about evaluation, and you'll miss opportunities. If it's a very viable product, you want to own something small of something really big, or something really big that's not going to get you anything, or very small. That's up to you guys.
Okay, well, I could go on and on, frankly, asking questions myself and learning from the panel, but they have given me that sign that that our time's up about a minute ago. So at this point, I really wanted to thank the audience first for your participation, for being here before lunch, and more importantly, to the panel who really took their Saturday away from their families to be here with us primarily for our gain. So thank you very, very much, the panelists.